we're seeing the impact that these devices are having on children, and it's been evidenced now. You know, boys as young as 6 are watching. Yeah.
You create a very, very realistic AI robot. She can do everything that you want her to do that would be very dangerous and damaging sexually, let's say, to do to a human being. And she won't have any feelings. If that happens, what then happens to the man? To his psychology, to his emotional health?
There's already an AI brothel.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's already one. Every device and every bit of the internet is just chipping away at that community. If you think we once were like this as a community, then you had TV so people would stay in and watch the TV.
Yes, you're right.
Then you've brought the devices into it, telephones and smart devices, social media, that's pulled people further away. We don't need to go out and meet. And now you've got AI, you're not even communicating with a real person, seemingly feeling connected because we've got the dopamine. We are going to have to get to a point where we say, a bit like, should I have a McDonald's for tea or should I cook something healthy? Should I use ChatGPT to do that or should I use my brain to do it?
Yeah.
And we are going to have this, get to that point where we have to make the healthy choice, not just do the easy choice.
I've said this before, and it's no disrespect to Stephen Bartlett. I never normally watch his podcasts. And I saw this one, and actually I thought he was brilliant on it. So Stephen, if you're watching, you're doing well, kid. Today's guest is Dr. Charlotte Armitage, who, amongst other things, is an author. So I'm just going to hold this up. I'm trying not to cover it. We have Generation Zombie here. So for those of you that are listening and not watching, go over to the trailer on Instagram where you'll see it. But obviously we'll have the links to it as well in the bio. So Charlotte is doing a lot of work around devices and children at the minute. But her whole story is much more layered and interesting than that. So I'm going to list a few things. Correct me if I'm wrong. You are a psychologist who has done a lot of TV and media work behind the scenes, which we'll talk a little bit about. You have a talent agency and acting school, don't you? That's right. You've also, up until very, very recently, done a lot of clinical hours, but you're working in schools at the minute, and you're sort of integrating your work as a psychologist. The book is obviously about device use, and you're taking that into schools. But also, you're integrating it with some of the acting stuff as well. So we have a very layered experience as a professional, lots of different interests and lots of stories within that. And I think the most important thing to get across today is, although this is talking about how devices are affecting our children, it's affecting families and society at large, isn't it? So I think there's going to be a lot to dissect, a lot of people with kids that are going to listen that are going to be shocked probably to find out what is actually happening to the child's brain and how that's affecting their development. But it's a really important conversation, and one that, especially with AI, is going to take over. We're already seeing the beginnings of it, and we're only in the infancy. So we know that we need to be educated on this stuff. So welcome to the New Mind.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, well, you've travelled far. Saturday, there's lots to juggle. You had a situation with your daughter. I'm really appreciative. So I just want this to be a really good episode for you and for the listeners. And I wanted to start because what I didn't know about you was that actually you were brought up in a family where your brother was severely disabled. And I think that definitely has an impact on you in terms of the career choices and so on and so forth. So tell me a little bit about those beginnings for you as little Charlotte.
Yeah, so so I'm mixed race as well. So my mum's from the West Indies, my dad's a Yorkshireman. Interesting combo together.
Yeah.
And my brother was, I mean, he's 7 years older than me, so I'm not exactly sure, you know, the stories kind of vary about what happened, but, you know, in a nutshell, he had severe fits as a young baby, and his brain was starved of oxygen and he ended up brain damaged. So he's had severe learning disabilities, very, very serious learning disabilities through his entire life. So he still needs full-time care around the clock. So those were my early years. And, you know, it's challenging. I mean, I was a young carer because I was looking after, you know, helping to look after my older brother. And, you know, my parents found it really difficult, I think, as any family would if they had to see their young baby fitting to a point where they nearly died.
Well, you can't imagine it, can you, as a parent
No.
yourself?
No, and I remember when I had my daughter, my mum was always, quite paranoid. Oh, I need to take her to the doctor. And I'm like, she's fine, but I think she was so worried about that same thing being enacted out with my child, her only grandchild. So, it really took its toll on them. So really, back then it was the 80s, there wasn't social support around. So it's not like we had much support for
And the narrative.
And
we didn't talk about these things, did we?
No, hence why as an adult I set up the talent agency and helped people with disabilities to get into screen acting. But yeah, there weren't people with disabilities on screen. No. There was a lot of bullying around my brother being disabled, lots of name calling because I grew up in Harrogate, which is a really white place.
Yeah.
So there's quite a lot of discrimination about me not being completely white as well, or being mixed race, my mum being from the West Indies. My mum experienced lots of racism. So there were lots of challenges. Financially we struggled because my parents couldn't really work because they had my brother. So yeah, my early years were quite difficult, really, looking back.
And you mentioned something whilst I was just sort of going through the main points of the story with you, and you mentioned, which I found fascinating actually, as well as all the other stuff that you've just mentioned, which I definitely want to delve into, but this hyperattunement as well, which, people that have what they feel is like a psychic skill are often hyperattuned because they've grown up in a situation where they've had to predict or they've had to be aware of something that's coming. And you told me a couple of stories that I love it, because I think the way the cellular response happens unconsciously in our bodies and our brains, it's fascinating that we can almost predict and not realise why we're predicting something. But to give context to that, obviously, when you were tiny and your brother probably found it a bit irritating to have a teeny little toddler running around him because he'd had all that time on his own before you came along, it'd maybe swipe at you or whatever. And tell the story anyway.
Yeah, so when my dad said that I started walking quite young, so about 10 months old, and he said my brother did not like having a new sister, and he would just try and, if I was irritating as a baby would be, he would just try and swipe me out the way, try and whack me. My dad said I used to just duck. So before he'd get to me, I'd just duck down. He said it was really funny because obviously this little tiny thing, just be able to duck out the way. And I think that's, the hypervigilance is, I suppose, only something that I learned through having my own analysis as part of my training. I realised that I was so hypervigilant. It explains a heck of a lot. But there were lots of things that happened when I was younger that, almost like I couldn't really explain at the time. Whereas now I think it was hypervigilance. So one of those situations, that the first time I can really remember it was when I was in primary school. And I always used to find being in the playground overwhelming and loud and cold. So I'd cried and gone and sat inside. And I was sat down on this chair, sat at a table. And there were these big windows. It was like an old church or village hall, church hall. And I just sat there. I was 4 years old, and I just looked up and I thought, like a ball's going to come through that glass in a minute. I need to move. So I just got up and moved. And then seconds later, this ball just came smashing through the window. And I think, at the time and for a long time, I just thought, that was really strange that I knew that was going to happen. But I think now what was going on is that I think on that really unconscious level, I was able to hear the way the ball sounded against the wall. I probably knew what the ball sounded as it was getting closer up the wall towards the glass. So I'd calculated on some level that actually that ball probably would come in.
But it was in a split second, perhaps.
A split second.
And you wouldn't have known that you were doing that. That's what's so interesting about the brain-body system. It just works out in a split second. That's why they say you should never ignore the gut instinct.
I really believe in the gut instinct.
Me too.
Yeah.
And we know why, because we have those things where we reflectively look back and say, I knew. Why did I not listen? But that's fascinating. And I would imagine growing up in a house where there are those sensitivities, because your parents have got to be more tuned in to your older brother, but you have to be more tuned in to your older brother. Your brother is tuned in different ways to the neurotypical child. So there's lots of sensitivities perhaps in the home, which then translate outside of the home. And because there was another incident on a bus, wasn't there?
Yeah, I mean, these sorts of things seem to happen all the time, and they happen a lot. And even as an adult, I mean, I sound a bit mad if I say it all, to be honest, but there was a time on a bus where I was just sat there and I thought, oh, it'd be just absolutely awful if I fainted on a bus now. About 11 at the time, and then the girl next to me just fainted. So I think I must have been able to sense that she wasn't right, and she was unwell, and that she was going to pass out. And then so it came into my mind as, oh, I hope that doesn't happen to me. Much like
a really strong protective element there, like that hypervigilance is you're sensing any form of danger, any form of threat, and then you're reading all the signals again unconsciously, not aware that you're doing that. And then the thing happens. But for an 11-year-old or a 4-year-old or it's confusing, isn't it? Like, how did I know that? Now we could certainly say that there was probably a level of hyperattunement and hypervigilance, but if those incidents keep happening, you could feel a bit strange, couldn't you? Which obviously there was so many incidents that you said there, but also it's completely normal to you to feel like that. So of course, when you had your psychoanalysis as part of your training, someone's saying to you, do you realise you're hypervigilant? But actually, for all of us, if we grow up feeling a certain way and we don't know anything else because you don't at that age, everything's just completely normal. So you don't have that ability to analyse yourself. And that's where things like self-abandonment happen, and being the helper and being the carer and being the one that actually probably gets validated through being the good girl. And I said earlier, didn't I? I said actually sometimes when there's a child that's too good to be true, it is a red flag. It's not just that they're a really good child. Not that I'm saying your parents were doing anything wrong necessarily, but the setup, we didn't talk about children living in homes with disabled siblings. And I've had many, many clients, as I'm sure you've met a few as well, especially because of the work that you do, that they say growing up with a disabled sibling is very, very different to the normal home.
Oh, it's hard because, I think the thing is, it's sort of, you're not allowed to be a child. It's kind of expected that, my dad always used to say, but you're normal, so you should be grateful, rather than it be, oh, you're a child, so you still have needs. And, people, it would always be a case of everyone would fuss over Tim because he had the additional needs. And as a child, you don't get that. It's definitely difficult, and so it depends on the severity of the disability. Now, my brother was really disabled. So there were things. Things that you're doing as a young child that I suppose other young kids weren't having to do, like, personal care for your older sibling and things like that. So, it took its toll. I mean, we didn't go on holidays. We didn't do anything like that because it's too challenging. We didn't go out for meals because it was too hard. It's too difficult, and it still is now. My dad's really old now and unwell, but all of our lives have all been completely kind of focused around his needs. And it is different if you have someone with a disability who can still go to work. But when you've got someone who can't even, look after their own sort of personal hygiene and they need 24-hour care, that's just a different level of need. It's a baby. It's an adult baby really that needs that level of care that a baby needs. So it's difficult, and it's one of those things where it's a bit difficult to complain about as well, because you're not the one who has the disability, and you have to be grateful that you don't. And yes, I mean, I think the thing is there was probably quite a lot missing in, my early years. But I think most people can say that. And I think the way I look at it now is that my parents did the best with the psychological and financial resources that they had back then. Because they did. And I have a different level. I have a completely different set of skills that I bring into my parenting relationship. And I'm sure my daughter will complain at some point about things that I didn't do as well. But I think they did the best, and it was a difficult circumstance, a really difficult situation.
And as you say, your mum moved here.
So she didn't have no family.
Home.
She didn't even tell her family, so they didn't even know until she went over, when it's before I was born, that my brother was disabled. So she was like on her own. And it's very much like a West Indian thing. Like she didn't want to ask for help, or, because she was quite proud and So she really struggled on her own, because you know it's like with a baby, you kind of need support. It takes a village. You need support around you to help. So if you're on your own and you don't have that, it's
and she was experiencing racism as well. So it wasn't that she was on her own I mean, that is massively difficult. But to be experiencing racism and people staring at your child, and I mean, it's you can't imagine it. Whereabouts from the West Indies was she?
Trinidad and Tobago.
Oh, was she? Wow. So, you know, again, I always think this about people that emigrate from, you know, the Caribbean, the West Indies, whatever. They see the pictures of England and they get here and go, oh,
yeah,
not quite what I was expecting. Can I go back? No, but what did she do as a job when she first came over?
She came over to be a nurse.
Yeah.
So she was a nurse, and I think she experienced a lot of racism in the NHS.
Yes.
And she said, you know, there was this woman who purposely failed her on an exam, and, you know, gave her 1 mark below what she should have done. And she said she really fought that, and it just took a lot out of her.
Yeah.
You know, she had to fight that racism, because at the back then you weren't sending emails, you were writing letters, going to a post office, having to post them. And I think it just took a lot out of her, really, as you can imagine it would, fighting that. And
did she make friends?
She's got, I mean, you know, she had lifelong friends. You know, one sadly passed away. Her best friend sadly passed away a few years ago. But yeah, she made friends. But, you know, I didn't grow up with anybody. Everyone was white around me, because I grew up in the whitest. Harrogate is the least multicultural town in the whole of the UK. So
slightly unfortunate for you then.
Yeah, exactly. So it was really clear that, you know, I wasn't white, and it was really obvious. And definitely of my mum, because she's obviously darker than I am as well.
Yeah. I mean, the only reason I ask is because I think it's just the layers that, as children, and we'll get into this with the phones as well, it's the layers that we pick up on. So, okay, you know, you could say, well, that's not that relevant, you know, especially for white people. You know, there's loads of black people, there's loads of people with brown skin. But actually, if you are the only person that looks different in your community, and you see or hear, even if it's conscious or not, that your brother is getting name calling, your mum's perhaps being looked at or spoken to in a way that's derogatory, you're growing up quicker than you should. You know, these are all quite imperative points in our development. Not to mention, which moves us directly onto your book, not to mention the extra layers that we deal with now. There's lots of poverty, there's lots of economic issues, there's lots of social issues. Post-COVID, they were there pre-COVID, a lot of them, but the phones, the technology, the bit that you've been really interested in, and you are now working quite closely within schools and communities. And what I love is that you're doing the work with foster children as well. It's not just schools. As you say, with your acting school and your talent agency, you're also representing people that don't always get represented, disabled people. And are we allowed to mention the success that you've had with some of your students? So tell me of the people that you've been able to get into TV and film.
Yeah, so we represent people from all over the country, I'd say, but predominantly in the north. And we represent lots of actors with disabilities. So we worked with a school called Mind the Gap, and we represented their artists. And we had a young man called Liam who went to Coronation Street. So he was the first actor with Down syndrome to have a regular role in Corrie.
Fab.
And then one of our actors he's got cerebral palsy. He's in Emmerdale. He's called James Moore, and he won a national television award.
Amazing.
And then one of our actors, we got him into a short film that ended up becoming an Oscar-winning film.
As you do.
Yeah, so there he was in Hollywood getting this award. And we've had lots of successes for all of our actors, really, across the board, because it's not just actors with disabilities. We represent children, represent adults, and you know, there isn't an age. People think, oh, I need to be really young to act, and I just say you really don't, because actually, if you're looking in that age bracket you think you need to be, that's everyone who's coming out of drama school. So much competition. So we have people who come and train with us who are in retirement, but then equally we have people who come before they go to drama school, or
Wow.
people who do it instead of drama school. So we have such a mix of people who come and train with us. And we are quite a different organisation in that we are very nurturing and very supportive. I feel that the best place for people to learn is somewhere that they feel safe and supported.
Couldn't agree more.
And we know that drama schools have quite a bad some do have quite a bad reputation for being quite punitive, quite harsh, a bit militant. And I don't know if you really get the best out of people like that.
No.
So we just have a really different approach to it. And it seems to work really well for the people that choose to come to us and train with us. So yeah, the agency it's done quite well. And we did quite a lot in terms of pushing that fair representation on screen at the time. So this was all before COVID, probably 2018, 2019. And we did some panel events with the BBC and Channel 4, just trying to raise awareness of it, push it, move that agenda, help people understand what it means to represent talent with disabilities, what that means in practice as well, because there would be a lot of expectation of, oh, we want to see you for your talent for an audition in London tomorrow. And you have to say, well, that's, £200 on the train. They're on disability living allowance. They also need a support worker. So there are going to need to be adjustments. If you want to have that person come to an audition, they just can't afford to be.
In other words, you can't just tick a box.
Yes.
That has to be those extra additional thoughts and procedures put in place.
Yeah.
But not just because you want to get someone on the screen so you can tick a box, actually because you care about that person and you want to do right by them like you should with any other human being. And I think that's what you're there to be the voice for, isn't it? Is to say fairness is really important, and it can't just be about ticking boxes, because you can see when someone's doing that anyway. It's not genuine. It doesn't feel good. And it also, I think people don't want things shoved down their throat. So if we're going to talk about fairness and equality, we don't want another campaign or another tick box, because people are bored of that. People don't mind if it's genuine.
Yeah.
If it's a genuine storyline that requires a genuine disabled person, then that's really important, that that person is treated well and that they're treated as good as everybody else. But if it is a campaign, I think people feel it, and I think it actually puts people off.
Yeah.
And so it's got to be done properly. And I think that's why I wanted to bring that to the attention of the listeners, really, is that, this book, although I know a lot of your work will be talking about that book, you are a very layered individual. So when we're talking about the impact on children, the way that you deliver that message isn't just to the children in the schools, it is to the foster children. You are thinking about everybody, and it is really genuinely inclusive for all the right reasons. So what made you write this book?
Well, I think I think I had a bit of a eureka moment, to be honest, where I just realised that it was the devices that were just fracturing everything.
Yeah.
They were just ruining everything.
Yeah.
I noticed it with my own daughter and all of her little friends at the time. They would come over with devices and I'd be saying, no, put it down. You're 7 years old. You're not going to sit with a phone at the table. So I noticed it with them. And then I noticed I was being bombarded really with emails for private therapy, private practice. And I thought, what's going on that people want to really spend that much money on private therapy?
Yeah.
Why aren't they waiting on the NHS? Then you looked at the waiting list, they were really long. And I started to look into it, dug into it a heck of a lot more, read a lot more, researched a lot more, worked with schools more. And really that's what formulated the book. So I started writing that probably 2021, 2022. Wrote the first case study of Tommy, and that was what I went into schools. I was reading that out, and it was interesting because the case study of Tommy it resonated with teachers far more than I expected it to.
I'm not surprised, because I have read the book. You'd gifted it to me a while ago, and I think it's a really impressive case study. And I think I can imagine that they were just like, right. Yeah. It's an attention grabber, isn't it?
Yeah, they were. And they said, I don't explicitly mention anything about ADHD or anything in the book, but they said, oh, so do you, when they read Tommy, and they said, oh, well, do you think that maybe some of these children that we're seeing in school who have difficulties with attentiveness and socio-emotional skills, do you think it's maybe to do with devices? And I said, well, it could well be. And they just said, well, it certainly sounds like that's what's
Yes.
been described with this person. Some of the schools actually changed the way that they did things. So instead of doing a direct referral for an assessment, they would ask the child and their family to adjust how much time they were spending on screens first, look at that first, then do the referral.
Yes.
And I know that now, the thing is, this has moved so quickly, you know, so when I wrote that book, there was nothing out there about devices really.
Yeah.
Even the Jonathan Haidt book wasn't out at
Yes.
the time.
Yeah.
So when I was writing this, there was nothing out there. Then all of a sudden came all of these different groups and professional groups and Jonathan Haidt's book and now various other books. And the science as well, thankfully, to support everything that's being said.
Yeah.
And the science has now come out, and we're seeing the impact that these devices are having on children. And it's been evidenced now. You know, everything I've said in the book has got a whole science base behind it. So I think it's moved so quickly, and schools are seeing the issue. Now, I now have groups of people who are professionals who are saying, we're now saying, how much time do you spend on a device?
Yes.
Do you have the device in the bedroom?
Yeah.
Let's look at the lifestyle factors, and let's look at devices as one of those lifestyle factors.
Yeah.
When we're looking at why are you suffering with these symptoms and traits that you're suffering with? Is it that you have an underlying disorder? Or is it that is it the way that you're living your life? Because these devices are having an impact on everything. They have an impact on the whole body. So musculoskeletally, they have an impact because we're more sedentary. Because they're addictive, we sit behind the device, we don't move. We're much more sedentary. So our muscles aren't as toned and conditioned. So we have a lot more physical pain. We have tech neck, lots of people with tech neck.
Oh my gosh.
From looking down. Physios will say that they have people now coming in for back problems in their 20s rather than their 40s because they're so sedentary. They're not moving around enough at all. We've got young children starting school. We're lacking in stamina. So stamina to write, stamina to run around, stamina to pay attention. So attentiveness has been compromised. They can't make eye contact. Some children don't even have the core strength to sit up properly on a chair because they've been so used to being slouched on a sofa.
I mean, it's awful.
It's terrifying. And the thing is, if we don't get it right in the 0 to 5, 0 to 10 year period, that child is on the back foot all the way through.
Are.
So if you look at the book Generation Zombie, look at it as a projection of what you're going to see in 10 years' time.
Yes.
So some people say it's worst case scenario. I'm saying no, it's not. It's a projection of all these young 0 to 5 year olds who were given devices through COVID. And since then, it's a projection of where they're going to go if we're not careful, if they just use them as they're using them now.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds scary, but it is scary.
Well, it has to. It sounds scary because the reality is scarier than I think we can even predict. I genuinely feel that way. And I know people are going to not like me saying that. Look, I'm very open about the fact I have an ADHD diagnosis, okay? I'm also living a life that is exceptionally stressful and I'm high functioning. So I do it really, really well. And that's not something I'm proud of, by the way. It's not something that we should aim for either. And I know that I say this a lot to people. I struggle. I don't know if you'll get this because most people don't. I struggle to do any work on a laptop. I don't know what it is. I don't know if I feel a bit more trapped, contained because it's on my lap. I do almost all of my work, be it invoicing, writing emails, writing letters, writing reports on my phone.
Oh my word.
I know.
No,
I know.
you?
I know. I'm saying
I couldn't do that.
I know. Everyone says the same. I can't do it the other way around. I don't know why. I would be really interested in someone else's opinion because most people just go, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. I don't know why I can't do it on a laptop.
But have you ever had a life where you've needed to sit at a laptop, a career?
No.
Exactly.
So I've never had to be at a desk.
Yeah. So it feels uncomfortable.
It just feels, I think I just feel trapped. Whereas with a phone in my hand doing it, again, I'm easily distracted. I genuinely believe that the early childhood trauma, you talk about the 0 to 5 years and I talk about the 0 to 7 years a lot with people, like that's your really important time for development. So if anything's going wrong in that time continuously, then the impact on your prefrontal cortex is obscene. And yes, you can change those things later on as an adult, but there's lots of different things physiologically, cellularly, neurobiologically that are going to be deeply ingrained if those early years aren't looked after properly. And as a society, that's why I say it is scary and we need to be really aware of it. And I know that the older I get, the more I struggle to do the things that are good for me. One, because of my lifestyle. And I would say that a lot of the time, because I'm always on a phone, because I don't do anything on a laptop, but I suppose a device is a device. You're talking about this and, the impact on the body. I try to look after my body. I haven't been able to as much recently because I'm too busy. And again, it's so unhealthy. But the reason I say that more than anything, because I am waffling, is I've got a daughter and she's watched me in my busiest years, and the impact of her watching me constantly be on the phone, constantly be busy, constantly be high functioning, I know that's going to have done some damage to a degree.
How old is she?
She'll be 18 in October.
And does she feel that it's done damage?
No, but I genuinely believe that her seeing that, and then
do you feel that you haven't been as present?
Yes.
Is that why?
Yeah. And I'm saying that because I think it's really important. We said earlier, didn't everyone thinks therapists have got it nailed? Actually, I think that I've probably underperformed as a mother while I've overperformed everywhere else, and it's a truth. And I say that because I want the people listening to this, and when people listen to you on other podcasts, to recognise that we kind of have to have this conversation because our children are being neglected now.
Yeah.
And
we're in favour of a phone.
Yeah.
I'm guilty of it as well. I'm really, really guilty of it. And I'm like you as well, as in I've worked a lot, worked really hard. Had the last 10 years I've had to, I'm a single mum. So had a baby on my own. And then I had to kind of build, at the same time my business had gone under. So I had to kind of build our life on my own with my daughter, and did that with her. But I didn't want to put her in nursery for days on end either. So I'd be working around her.
Me too.
Or waiting until she'd go to bed on the night. I think that's why I work really well at night now, because I've become really conditioned to working late.
Me too. It's exactly the same.
Yeah, I have to be really strict about the phone in our house.
Well, particularly as you've written the book.
I know. I have to practice what I preach. But we're all really guilty of it, especially our age.
Yes.
Because these phones came in before. We're that first generation that's had them in our 20s and up. We didn't really know what an algorithm was or anything like that.
I didn't know what a text message was, let alone an algorithm.
Exactly. We didn't know any of this stuff, did we? I mean, we were all absolute slaves to this algorithm and these addictive mechanisms we didn't have the awareness that younger people have.
Absolutely.
So I think you're not alone. I think we're all the same in terms of being busy, having our heads stuck in our phones. And as soon as you become consciously aware of that, then you make a different choice. So you start to make different choices about how you use your phone.
And also, I think it's just really important to be honest and say, and I don't know if I overdo this, because I just want my daughter Lila, to be able to say to me, yep, you did this wrong, this wrong, this wrong. And for me not to go, well, that's not true. I want her to be able to say that, and for me to say, you're absolutely, And that's why I always say it to her first, so it gives her permission if she wants to. But I almost think she tunes out now because I've done it so much. Like, that everything you've done is fine and I've probably got loads wrong and it's okay if that's the case.
My daughter does this. I sometimes say to her, I'll say, do you feel that am I being a good mum? And she's like, oh God, Mum, we've had this conversation. Are you happy? Are you feeling all right? I mean, it must be like the trauma of being raised by a therapist.
Yes.
I think.
Oh God. That's probably the worst part of it all, is that we're like psychoanalyzing them all the time, but they know that it's from the right place.
Yeah, and I think it makes, I don't know, I mean, look, my daughter's Lilia, and she seems to just be quite resilient, to be honest.
Yeah, which is probably genetic because of you.
But it's the emotional intelligence. It's the emotion. I think if you're emotionally present. So thing is, you can be with your child all the time.
Yeah.
But if you're not emotionally present,
Yes.
even if you're not on a phone or you're not working, if you're just zoned out
Yeah.
for whatever reason, your child's not getting the emotional nourishing they need anyway.
True.
So you can still be busy and give your child that emotional
For sure.
containment and presence that they need.
Yes, that's so important. Safety goes back to safety that you
Mm.
mentioned earlier with the acting schools. But one thing I was always aware of, because even, 18 years ago, when I'd take Lila to the park, to the swings, even then I'd see people like pushing the kid in the swing while they were on their phone. I never did that. If we went to the park or we went out, and even now, the phone would be in my handbag. I would not be on it. And even now, if Lila was to come in the room and I was in the middle of doing something, I'd say, just let me finish this. Give me 5 minutes to finish it. And then I'd put the phone down rather than like, yep, whatever, while still being on the phone. I try my best to say, I do need to finish this. I'm not just scrolling on social media. I'm doing some work. Let me finish it. And then I'll put the phone down. Because then at least when she is talking to me and does want to, which is very rare because, at the age she is, she does want to be independent, which is fine. But if she does want to talk to me, I do try to do that. She might argue that a bit, but that's what I think I'm doing anyway, because sometimes what you think you're doing is not how it's often received by other people. So I'm careful to say that. I think I'm doing that. And I'm in my mind, that's my intention to do that. Whether she feels that or not is up to her. But I think that's the key. It's the intention behind it all. Because if your intention is to be present, even if you can't always be, I think they feel that, don't they?
And I think the fact that you question it and wonder about it and worry about it is a sign that you're aware of it. I think the issue with devices and the issue with people not being emotionally present in general is when you're not emotionally present. So you're not even aware you're not emotionally present. And the thing with the device is that it takes us out of the space. My argument in the book is that this is kind of like the modern era of, say, alcohol.
Yes, you're right.
Because if you look at things like food or exercise, drugs, alcohol, when you're used to excess, they are used to take us out of
escape.
It's escapism. And I think that the device now acts as that soother, that escapism. So, and it's very, very addictive and it's socially acceptable.
Correct.
And that's what makes it worse. So if you're just scrolling and you're not emotionally present at all with your child, then it will have an impact on them. But I think if you're aware that you scroll and you're questioning that and you're saying, am I present enough? That's normally a sign that you are, you are giving your child enough because you're questioning yourself about it.
One of the things that I've said before about the ADHD thing is because the brain's so malleable in those first few years, the impact is physiological as well as psychological for overuse of phones, devices and other things that are detrimental to us. So therefore the brain could mimic ADHD even if it's not. And obviously you could get stuck there because we know with emotions where there's a highly emotional surge or a lack of emotion, the freeze, I guess, or the numbing, you could stay stuck in that framework until you're an adult and you're able to or want to work through that. And I wonder, because I've often referenced the childhood trauma in me and others that have then been diagnosed with ADHD, if the abuse or the neglect, which device use can be a form of neglect if you're using it addictively, that impact could definitely show up as ADHD and other personality disorders as well. So I guess the question is, I've spoken about this before, but I'd like to hear it from you just because you've got so much experience. The impact on the amygdala, on the dopaminergic response, on the neurobiology, on the cellular biology of the body. You mentioned the sort of skeletal issues and muscular issues and everything else. But would you say that, as the teachers had mentioned it, about the kind of, could some of these kids that look ADHD actually not have ADHD? What's your thoughts on that?
I think so. The main neurotransmitter system involved in ADHD is the dopaminergic system. So the main neurotransmitter is dopamine, and it's to do with a malfunction, I suppose, of that system. Now, the main neurotransmitter system that devices work on is the dopaminergic system. A newborn baby, their brain is very blank slate, when they're born. They're born that way so that the brain can then adjust to the environment that you put that baby in. And that's why, like you say, if you have a lot of trauma, that your limbic system may be over-evolved as you're searching for risk in your environment for your safety. So the brain will grow and adapt to suit the environment that it's in. Now, if we're giving these devices at a very young age to children, every time they watch a YouTube video, every time they watch whatever it is they're watching on it, they're having this hit of dopamine. So the brain is being flooded with this neurotransmitter in high doses that they wouldn't normally have. So we're creating a brain that is going to be searching for that dopamine. Now, on a device, say they're on TikTok or YouTube, they can scroll every 10 seconds and get something new. So it's dopamine, dopamine, dopamine. Then when you try to get them to put that down, the brains become conditioned to that dopamine. So then they can't sit still. They can't focus because they're not getting the hit of dopamine at the pace that they need it, or that they've been conditioned to having it whilst they've been using the iPad. And what we are seeing now is, I spoke to a school not so long ago who told me that everybody in their early years environment was presenting with some traits of either ADHD or autism. How can that possibly be? Gosh. And this is a really reputable school as well. And you think, how can that possibly be? So I think it's the brain. The brain, it's a withdrawal, isn't it? The brain has got used to having, and it's not just in kids. I think as adults as well, we can become addicted to these devices. Yeah, we get used to the dopamine hit from the device. Then when we put it down, we're like, I'm not fit. I need a hit, basically.
It's so true.
And then you're searching for something, and then that looks like a lack of attentiveness. Now, if you can't focus and pay attention, how can you listen? That's one of the traits.
Yeah,
can't listen, can't sustain focus, can't hold a conversation. Well, you won't be able to, will you? Because your brain is looking for that next bit of stimulation. That the brain is going to be searching for that above. It's a very powerful system in our brain.
Very.
This system evolved to enhance the survival of the human race. Yeah. It made us. The reason it's there is so that we enjoy food and we enjoy sex. Yeah. But then it was hijacked by drugs of abuse, and it's now hijacked by lots of things like our favorite TV programs, by devices, more so. So. We've now got to this point where we can artificially be producing this dopamine in our brain over and over and over again. Nothing else is going to feel as stimulating. I think it's why people struggle when they go into the workforce now. Because I think the workforce is, if you've had a grown up for 18 years having gaming and iPads and phones and social media, you've been essentially having a junk food diet for the brain, then you've got to go into a workplace where you're not having that level of stimulation. Of course you're bored. Of course you feel deflated in there. It's not interesting. Nothing piques your interest because nothing is as interesting as dopamine as far as the brain's concerned.
And interestingly, if that's the case, and I again, you articulate beautifully, so it's a good question to lean into. If that's the case, if you're undermotivated because you're seeking your dopamine elsewhere, then it's ringing alarm bells for the nervous system, isn't it? Because you have to be motivated to survive, to get the food, to procreate, to be able to manage your environment for threat. So if you're not getting enough dopamine, then you're going to be emotionally dysregulated as well, to some degree, especially if a perceived threat comes at you, which is like the boss telling you what to do, perhaps, or something going wrong and you've not been able to manage that emotion because you're not getting the right balance of the neurotransmitters, which, as you say, is the dopaminergic system. So all of that then would lead to people not being able to tolerate working for other people and being told what to do and being expected to listen in a meeting for an hour or 2 hours sometimes. Even listening to a long form podcast, we know that often that if you look at the YouTube, and I do the analytics, to retain people over a period of, mine are quite long, to retain people over a period of an hour and a half, for example, is really, really difficult. In fact, almost impossible, unless the subject is really, really bitey and there's lots of moments. And actually, organic conversations don't flow that way unless you're really trying to stimulate an audience. the chances are nowadays they're going to drop off and maybe come back in. They might, and this is why with YouTube, for example, you have to put out shorts every day as well to draw people back in case they've forgotten you.
Yeah.
You have to constantly be going, here I am again, I haven't gone anywhere, I'm still here, like desperately trying to lure people in.
Yeah.
But it's not because I want to do that, it's because that's how the brain works now.
Yeah.
And it's all very manipulated and it's not organic, and
It's artificial.
It's so artificial.
Yeah.
And yet these conversations, I said to you, I never plan questions because I like it to be
Yeah.
organic, because I really feel drawn towards the organic flow of things. So would you say with the device use, with that dopaminergic system being out of whack, if you like, out of balance, and then if you look at some of the computer games that a lot of the kids are playing as well, I mean, some of them are incredibly violent and, you know, really unhealthy, but all the other kids are playing it. So it's really difficult for me to say no to Johnny, you know, I've got to. So what's your opinion on that whole, I mean, I've spoken for an incredible amount of time. If anybody's still listening, I'll be surprised. But what's your whole opinion on all of that?
I think it all contributes to the same issue, and it's not just the device and what people are doing on it, it's what they're not doing whilst they're on it. So you mentioned about the workplace and not wanting to work for somebody else and not being able to tolerate working for someone else. A lot of that will come from not having the interpersonal skills. Why don't we have the interpersonal skills? Because at a young age, instead of at 2-3 years old having play dates in person, you're not doing that, you're on the iPad. So the early years, we develop the foundations and the building blocks of those interpersonal skills. They then evolve further as we go to school and as we mature throughout our lives. And I think when you get to a point where children are on an evening not playing with friends, they are on their devices, or on weekends they're not going to a club, they're on their devices. They're not having as much opportunity to socialize in person and practice out these real world interpersonal skills. So they can't manage the differences, they can't tolerate other people. I think we saw a lot of that when we came out of COVID.
Yes.
People became very desensitized to other people.
Yeah.
A huge amount of anger.
Yes.
Because we just all got used to just our own thing.
Yeah.
And I think in some ways we're still adjusting to that.
I do.
But I think it's even worse now, because not only did, 6 months ago, we were worried about, children are spending most of the time relating to each other via social media. Well, now it's a step further removed from real relationships, because they're not even relating to a real person. They're relating to AI and to chatbots.
Yeah.
So they're now having a relationship with a chatbot that will tell them what they want to hear.
I
So
know.
they're never learning what it feels like to not get your own way, to be around someone that you don't really like. How do you manage that? So that we're now becoming a step more isolated.
It's awful.
Than we were when I even wrote that book. We're becoming these very isolated creatures. Our attention spans are shortening and shortening. Teachers tell me they have to put lessons into 10-minute chunks now because people can't pay attention. Children don't have the attentiveness to finish their SATs exams. They fall asleep in their GCSE exams. So our attention spans they can't put a film on at Christmas anymore because no one can sit still for long enough to watch a film.
I mean, I used to love the film day at Christmas.
Never-ending story.
I mean, one of my favourites.
Exactly. So could you imagine them trying to get kids through that now? It just wouldn't be worth the pain.
No, it definitely wouldn't.
But that's what's happening. So we're if you took a real step back and looked in at what's going on, actually we've got humans who, if you look at from the 70s to now, who are getting fatter and fatter and fatter.
Yes.
Because of the obesogenic environment,
Yeah.
because of being more sedentary,
Yeah.
who are becoming more physically unhealthy and unwell because we are sedentary and we're not moving around.
Yeah.
Who are spending huge amounts of time online, not socializing in real life, whose attention spans are shortening like this. And all the while, we've got this artificial technology becoming an artificial super intelligence that will soon be far more powerful and intelligent than us. And there we are, the human species just sat there, no energy, no stamina, too big to really move around, can't hold a conversation, can't really think for ourselves because we do everything via chat GPT now. That's where we're getting to this point. And then how vulnerable are we as a species when we've now got AI, which I feel like AI is its own species. I think that
it's terrifying on a level that I don't think anyone is willing to talk about. I don't know if you saw this Stephen Bartlett podcast with the AI guy.
Yeah.
Who was one of the founders in developing AI. Yeah. You watched that
I've
one?
seen it, yeah. It's the only one I've ever watched, actually.
Me too. Of Stephen Bartlett,
yeah,
you mean?
I don't watch any of those podcasts. I don't really watch podcasts.
No.
But I saw that because I was going to write my second book about it. So I was researching, before I'd seen that podcast, by this point I'd stopped researching because I was researching. And I said to my agent, I said, I don't think I'll survive if I have to write this for 2 years because it's so depressing.
Yeah.
And it scared me so much that I just said, I'm taking a step back.
Yeah.
I am focusing on my daughter and being alive right now. And what do we need to do? Because the future feels very unpredictable.
It does.
It's very unstable.
Yes.
AI, I mean, it's really frightening.
It's really frightening. And, I've said this before, and it's no disrespect to Stephen Bartlett, but it slightly is. I don't actually like his podcast. And I know he's done really, really well. So for little old me to criticise Stephen Bartlett is absolutely ridiculous, but I just don't like the style. So I never normally watch his podcasts. Not anymore. And I saw this one, and actually I thought he was brilliant on it. So Stephen, if you're watching, you're doing well, kid. No, I honestly thought when he was on a subject that he really understands, instead of the celebrities and some of the subjects that I don't think he fully gets, I thought he was phenomenal on that as an interviewer. And I thought his guest was brilliant because he wasn't trying to be shocking. He was telling the truth.
Really scary though, because
he is scary.
Because I just sat there thinking, you come across as this really pedestrian, well-educated, normal-ish looking man.
Yeah.
Normal-looking man.
Normal-ish.
not normal-ish. I don't know why I said ish. Normal-looking man. But then at the end of it, I thought, but you've created something that could destroy humanity.
You're sitting there like, oh God, this is awful. You did it.
Yeah. I didn't know what to think of him because I thought...
Psychopath.
I thought the same. I was like, you've gone and created this tech, didn't really think about it, fine. But then I just thought, you're kind of like the devil, aren't you?
Yeah.
Really,
Absolutely.
Unintentionally, it sounds harsh, but unintentionally, you've created something that could wipe us out.
I think could is probably the wrong word. I think will.
Yeah, we are. It's almost like we're going to be extinct. I feel like man has spent so long creating tech, and we've created this AI, which is now going to be its own species, and it's snowballing. We're already seeing children killing themselves from talking to chatbots.
Yes, that's right.
People not even talking to each other anymore. They're talking to chatbots. People don't think anymore because they ask a ChatGPT to do everything for them.
Oh, God, it's so
what
awful.
are we going to do? I mean, my daughter wants to be a surgeon when she gets older.
Amazing.
But she's 11, nearly 12. That job's not going to exist in 20 years when she's by the time she qualifies.
No.
I even wonder whether it's made me, researching them for that book has made me question everything I do with my daughter in terms of the education system.
Yep.
I've thought, is there even any
point?
Because what she's learning now, is that going to be useful for her when she gets older? No, because they're not being taught to think the same. So I've tried to encourage to focus on the practical skills. So,
which is what he was saying.
Yeah,
old devil himself. He was he was saying about plumbing. Tell your kids to go and be a plumber.
Yeah.
Or something practical that you have to do with your hands.
Yeah, exactly. Something, it's the last thing. So, I mean, I have some properties as well. So we're going to renovate one of those this summer. And I've said, look, I want her to learn how to do these things, because the thing I thought is humans are all, whilst we still exist on this earth, we're going to need somewhere to live.
Yeah.
We're going to need things like bathrooms. We're going to need food. So we're going to still need all of those.
Yes.
So I think that businesses around that will be okay. And performance arts, at one point, I did think about closing down the acting school that I had.
No, that's the work, because we're going to need it more than, we're going to crave that live performance more than ever before.
I think so. And, what acting can do in terms of the brain and how it can stretch our attentiveness and memory and emotional intelligence. And I actually thought, the performance art, absolutely, because we're going to want to go and see a real person on a stage doing something.
Yeah.
So, and those are very, part of the proposal I put down for one of the books was talking about focusing on the really human skills. So looking at those key interpersonal skills, eye contact, being able to hold a conversation, being able to read and understand other people, listening skills.
Yes.
Those skills we will still need.
Yes.
Because we are going to get to a point, if we rely on AI too much, where what you're doing is essentially going, it's a lobotomy, isn't it? You take your
Basically,
take your brain out, you outsourced it to AI. So AI is doing it all. Now, if you're not using your brain's just not going to work.
Yes.
And it is going to be about choice. We are going to have to get to a point where we say, a bit like, should I have a McDonald's for tea or should I cook something healthy? I'm going to do the healthy thing. I'm going to cook something, and it's going to be the same. Should I use ChatGPT to do that, or should I use my brain to do it?
Yeah.
And we are going to get to that point where we have to make the healthy choice about how our device diet is integrated into our lives, not just do the easy choice.
Such a fascinating conversation, because it's frightening, but it's also really useful, because every time I think about that podcast, I'm like, the end of the world is near. And then I think,
that's how I felt. That's exactly how I felt. I had to take days away.
Me too.
I went into the woods. Dramatic, but I went into the woods with my daughter.
You sound so much like me.
I was just like,
I licked a tree.
Hugged a tree, camped by a fire. No, we didn't go that far, but I did. I went to the woods. I was looking at the trees. I thought, it's so beautiful. The world's so beautiful. And I just thought, I need to be around things that are real and no technology. I just needed to be outdoors. We went to the coast, to the seaside. We went to some woods. I just thought, this is really, ignorance is bliss, and sometimes not knowing is better. And once I'd done that research, and then the thing is, when I did the research, at least at that point, I thought, well, maybe I'm just wrong. And then when I watched that podcast, it was everything I'd thought and feared this man who created it was saying. Yeah. And that's what terrified me, is I thought, at least I could just imagine that I had got this calculation wrong.
You could go, oh, I've just probably over-egged it.
I'm just probably worrying about nothing. But then he said all of that, and I thought, oh no, it's everything that I thought.
I was the same as you. I genuinely felt traumatized.
Yeah.
I couldn't talk about it for days afterwards. Traumatized. It was really awful. And so I'm not recommending anyone go watch it, because you'll feel awful. But the point is, it's probably good to watch, because then I started to think about the obvious, which is very much what you've said. We'll start to want really healthy things again. We'll start to, I said to you earlier, I saw a meme about someone going, oh, we don't need therapists anymore, we've got ChatGPT. And to a large degree, I mean, ChatGPT can obviously answer a lot of questions. And I started to think, it's a good job that we're entrepreneurs, that we've got more about us than just being a therapist, because perhaps I'm going to be out of work. But realistically, if I'm really, really upset, ChatGPT can probably help with a problem to a point. But actually, if there's something where you need instinct, intuition, like you say, eye contact, tone of voice, body language, somebody who's just maybe been in a similar situation to you, so they're just relating to what you're saying. This connection. Yeah. And that connection floods our system, oxytocin, all the endorphins, all the lovely, lovely neurochemicals, and we feel good. A bit like when you go for a walk in the woods, or if you go for a run, or if you just, and I would say, because that's why I reference being so busy, is that I was the girl that went to the gym 5 days a week, no matter what. It was such a priority. It was almost an addiction, actually, if I'm being honest with you. It probably was unhealthy at some point or another. But ultimately, I ended up with a few injuries. I struggled to get in. And then I filled the time with other things. And now I'm not moving anywhere near as much as I should. And I'm starting to think, this is really, really bad, because moving your body is what you're meant to do. Now, you saying that about the kids, if they're not even I moved my body all that time, and I'm worried about it after about a year of not being as active. They're not even getting the opportunity to use their bodies from the beginning. Exactly. Like, we're literally, that's abuse.
And we're in our 40s, and we have aches and pains I was a gymnast, so from overmoving. What are these kids? What age are they going to start getting aches and pains?
Yeah.
I spoke to a head teacher, actually, and she's really on the pulse with this. And she said in 10 years' time, we're going to have, lots of kids with lots of medical issues. And I said, yeah, because the developmental years are being hijacked, because a device is far more addictive. So if you put a 2-year-old behind a device, 3-year-old, they're going to sit behind that device rather than getting up and moving around.
Yeah.
Now, they need to get up and move around to develop their dexterity, their coordination, their muscle movement, their muscle memory, develop the muscles. So if they're sat down, those muscles and all of those skills aren't developing. then you've got to think they've started on the back foot, haven't they?
Yeah.
And that's because it's instinct and nature to want to run around and pick everything up. But if we're going to give them the device, the brain will just get addicted. The thing with dopamine, I mean, you mentioned it earlier, if the brain's being flooded with dopamine, where's the urgency to get up and be motivated to procreate?
Yeah.
Do you know about the study where they put intracranial self-stimulation into a rat and it could press the...
Yes.
So it could press the lever to release dopamine in its brain.
Yeah.
Now this rat continued to press the lever, releasing dopamine, basically getting high all day, fun, but to the detriment of its babies. So the babies died. So that's how powerful dopamine is. Yeah. That a rat would rather get high, stimulate the dopamine,
press a lever, then look after it.
Have the dopamine. It was more, and that's addiction.
That is addiction.
Look at addiction. Every single addiction. Yeah. It's very selfish, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
The object of addiction is far more important than anything else, even your own kids. Yeah. So that completely hijacked our biology and nature, hasn't it?
Yeah. And AI is superseding that at a rate that, because that guy was basically saying, wasn't it? And I think the only bit that you could never be more into, I mean, I might be completely wrong. I'd be interested in what you'd say on this. I think the only bit that you cannot be more intelligent than is intuition. So I don't think AI could ever be more intelligent than that, because he mentioned the emotion side of it, that they can't do the emotion as such, but they can mimic what that looks like, a bit like a psychopath, actually.
It's a facsimile. I mean, I think it looks like that. That's how yeah. Well, I think it's...
Well, that's what,
I think it's like a psychopath, because you've effectively got this very intelligent being, shall we say, with no empathy and no guilt.
But can mimic.
Yes.
So the robots, because we'll see this as well. You think, and I've had this conversation with a lot of men, and it's but it's a true thing. You think you create a very, very realistic AI robot, a female, or a male. It doesn't just have to be a female, but let's go female for now. She can do everything that you want her to do, that would be very dangerous and damaging sexually, let's say, to do to a human being. She can do more than that. She will be instructed to do exactly what you want her to do. Do this, do that. It doesn't matter whether it's sexual or non-sexual. And she won't have any feelings. So what if that happens, which everyone's saying it will happen, what then happens to the man, to his psychology, to his emotional health? Because again, dopamine, I don't need a woman. Exactly. Procreation ends.
And then we're just even more isolated.
Yeah.
There's already an AI brothel. I think it's in Belgium, I might be wrong, there's an AI brothel.
Oh my God.
Yeah, there's already one.
How did I not know that already?
So there's already one where you can go find a doll and, a robot doll and do whatever you want with it. So what's happening then, though, is to say it's just the next step on from porn.
Yeah, it is.
So 42% of 14 to 17-year-old girls say they've been sexually assaulted.
Yeah.
Why has that happened? Well, if we look at what's happening with porn, boys are accessing porn very young.
Yeah.
So they are having that level of stimulation.
And what are they seeing?
Well, they're seeing that, it's not normal vanilla sex, is it? So they're seeing all sorts of hardcore going on. Now, by the time they come to actually having sex with a girl, it isn't, there's not...
They're not stimulated.
They're not stimulated. The emotional connection's not there. They don't really understand why this girl's not performing like the girl in the porno. So it's then affecting, then boys are trying to do what they want to do with the girl. The girl is experiencing this has been assaulted.
Yeah.
Girls are now saying, don't want boyfriends. So
there's
a rise in misandry, as we've had the rise in misogyny perpetrated by the internet.
Yeah.
You are now seeing, and you will always see the equal and opposite reaction. We're now seeing a rise in misandry.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. And actually, I think it's making a lot of girls think, I don't even want to be sexual. In fact, I don't want to be female. I might say I'm non-binary then, because I'm not. I know that maybe that seems like a big skip to people, but you can imagine for a young girl that's gone through that, who sees, because I've said this with a lot of the girls that obviously grew up with my daughter, and I've seen a lot of the boys exhibit extremely narcissistic behaviour. Like I'm not saying they're narcissists, I'm saying the behaviour is very narcissistic. They're talking to 10 girls at once on TikTok, TikTok, not TikTok, TikTok, Snapchat, all these other things. They're watching hardcore. I'm talking fisting, those sorts of things, really hardcore things. And if one girl isn't doing what they want, or if she's got a bit cocky, she's got a bit of attitude with him because she's found out he's talking to other girls, he just ignores her, shuts her off, moves on to the next. Well, when you bring robots into that, which is essentially what's happening, the girls don't want boyfriends, and if they do want boyfriends, their experiences haven't been great. I'm not blaming the boys for this. It's a systemic issue, isn't it?
Well, yeah, they were kids when they were given these things at the end of the day.
Correct.
So they were kids, they've been exposed to this porn. Now the brain's expecting that level of stimulation and it's not getting it.
And they're angry because the dopamine thing.
Yeah.
So now they're like, I just want some more.
And they want something that's going to stimulate them in the same way. And it's, so they're searching for that, and it's sex and it's puberty and hormones and biological. So they are going to be looking for that stimulation. I always say, if you think, it reminds me of when you can see the difference, because I always think about Friends, right?
Yeah.
And do you remember with Joey, he would always get the lingerie catalogue out to get a quick look at a girl in a bikini and be like, oh, and he'd get his jollies like that. Well, now, I mean, that's not exciting.
No.
Look how far Kanye West and his partner had to go for something to actually break the internet. She had to turn up completely stark naked to actually have an impact.
Yeah.
If you'd have just done a photo, no one cares because people are doing that all the time. If you'd have done a sex tape, no one's bothered because people are doing that. Actually, what it takes to shock now in this day and age is, no, you're going to have to turn up to a red carpet event and drop your pants.
And not only that, he's pretty much covered head to toe.
Yeah.
He's got balaclava on, he's covered his face.
But it's that juxtaposition.
Yes,
I think
exactly.
that is what makes it shocking.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And he knows that because he's an intelligent guy, albeit slightly off the Richter scale of sane. But, you could argue that he's playing the game well.
Yeah, well, he wanted to break the internet.
Yeah, and he achieved it.
And as long as she's consenting to all of that.
Yeah, which is the question, isn't it? Yeah. Is she consenting? And again, who flipping knows now?
Yeah.
Because everything's so wild. I mean, I've said on many different episodes, the most you would see of porn when I was growing up, I was born in 1978 for time context, was it, once a month, maybe bin day, you would see half a page of a porn magazine. Someone in the street had obviously thrown it out in the bin bag. Maybe a fox or a cat had opened it, and you'd see something on the street and you'd be a bit like, oh, that's a bit dirty. And you'd talk about it for days because it was such a shock that you'd see, I don't know, a vagina or a pair of boobs. It was a bit, naughty. I mean, obviously it wouldn't happen now because no one gets magazines, but like that seemed so outrageous at the time that you would see that and that somebody was sitting in their house doing that stuff. Yuck. Whereas now, by the age of, and I'm going to say, because I'm thinking about Lila being at secondary school, some of the boys, especially if they had older brothers, were talking about sex that I didn't even know about until I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And that is really upsetting.
Boys as young as 6 are watching. Yeah. So it's, and that's what's happening at a very young age.
Erectile dysfunction by the time they're 21.
Exactly.
That's what I mean about procreation. It's a real threat that we're not going to be able to continue to do that.
We're becoming so disconnected. You know, every device and every bit of the internet is just chipping away at that community. If you think we once were like this as a community, then you had TV so people would stay in and watch the TV.
Yes, you're right.
Then you've brought the devices into it, so that's pulled people even further away. Social media, so you've got telephones, people are further away. You've got then smart devices, people are further away. You had social media, that's pulled people further away. We don't need to go out and meet. And now you've got AI, you're not even communicating with a real person. So we're all these isolated islands just on our own, seemingly feeling connected because we've got the dopamine. So we've got that superficial, it's a false sense of connection.
Yes.
We feel connected. We feel happy because we've got lots of dopamine, but that's not going to keep us alive. So our life longevity is linked to the depth and meaningfulness of the relationships that we have around us more than anything. So if you don't have a close network, your health and well-being will suffer as you get older. So our loneliness rates are skyrocketing.
Yeah.
And they say that loneliness is bad. It takes as many years off your life as smoking 20 a day. So Loneliness is really bad for us. And that's what's happening with the explosion of AI. Well, with devices, which is why I first wrote the book, was all about how our interpersonal skills were being affected.
Yes.
So then we wouldn't be able to forge friendships, we wouldn't be able to work, we wouldn't be able to have relationships because we'd be struggling because we've not really had the opportunity to practice them. But now that AI's here, it's putting a wedge in between us all. So we have to make a real effort to have relationships, to show up, to see people. I mean, I do a games night and every once a month, and it really peeves me off when people cancel last minute. And I'm like, for God's sake, if you make a goddamn appointment, this is a Saturday night, unless somebody's ill, you've got it in your blooming diary, you're coming. Okay? You're either coming or you're not. Just say you're coming or you're not. But no one can stick to a commitment anymore. People seem to be so flaky as well. It's sort of like, oh yeah, sorry, I can't come now. As soon as someone does that to me a couple of times, I'm done. It annoys me so much because I just think we need to really focus on. Remember years ago, you just say, I'll meet you in town at 1 o'clock. No phones. And you just turn up. You'd say that 2 weeks beforehand and you would turn up at 1 o'clock on that day.
You would.
And your friend would. You didn't need to text before. You didn't need to ring. No. You just knew that someone had made a commitment to you and you would make it a commitment to them.
So true.
Now it's like texting on the morning. Are you still all right? Still okay? You still coming?
Still
3 hours later. You still coming today? Have you changed your mind? It's become that's become normalized as well.
It has.
Value that's. I think the value of people has been compromised. And like you say about your daughter's friends and boys having lots of girls on the go at the time, there's no value, is there? It's like people are so disposable now because you can pick up partners online. You can go to a bar and be, I don't know what happens there, but matching with loads of people.
Yes.
Pick someone, go sleep with them that night, pick someone the next day.
That's exactly what happens.
And so there's no need to work hard. What is the what's the motivation to work hard at a relationship when actually if you're in it because you want your intimacy needs met, you can just do that anyway. You don't really need to work hard at a relationship. If you feel that you've got intimacy through this pseudo relationship that you're having online with all of these people on social media, you don't need that connection there either.
I think people must feel the lack of true connection. I mean,
only if they felt it though. So
so you don't know what you've got unless you've had it.
So we're of an age where we've had that. So we know what it feels like to feel lonely. But there are a lot of I was speaking to a friend who's a psychotherapist, and he was saying to me that he had this girl who, young girl, about 18 or 19, something like that, who was coming in, and she was sort of, not feeling great and in many different ways. And he was trying to sort of say, but you're lonely. You don't go out. You don't see anyone. You haven't got anyone around you. This is loneliness. But she didn't know. She couldn't recognise that because that's all she'd ever known is spending a life going to school, come home, be on the phone. That's it. So they're not used to knowing what it feels like to have really good and also I think the connections aren't, necessarily as deep that you make now because
they're not.
Make a friend, then your friendship becomes about those online transactions, which are superficial, curated transactions of what that person wants you to think they are, rather than getting to know who they really are.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I've got a friend that I met when I did diving when I was 14, and we're still friends now, and we connect over diving and gymnastics. That's what we had in common. And so we'll still talk about the Olympics, the Worlds, the Europeans. We'll still have chats about that. And he said to me the other day, so we've been friends, over 30 years. And he just said, do you think we'd still be friends now if we'd have met? Do you think we'd still be friends if we'd have met, with devices and all that stuff? And I said, I don't know, actually. And he said, yeah, we probably would have met and gone, hey, this is my Instagram. And then that would have been it, rather than going, oh, do you want to hang out? Should we go do something? And
so important.
And spending time together and developing that bond. And that's what stays with you. You're not going to stay with a bond that you had a few chats with someone on,
Well,
Instagram.
not when there's a new chat that pops up.
Yeah.
Because you're going to get that stimulation again, that dopamine again. And that's more exciting than that. Oh, you're still all right, great. Yeah, you haven't met each other, you haven't hugged, we haven't
got the connection.
No, you haven't.
You haven't really got a connection.
And you don't know, like you said, you don't even know you haven't got the connection because you've not had the connection because you've spent your life on a phone or on a device. And the only connection you've had is at school where you've struggled to pay attention because when you're home, you're on the device. So actually that's just felt like hard work. And it's strange, isn't it? Because when you have a genuine connection with someone and then say for whatever reason you don't get the opportunity to see them again, they might move to Australia, they might die, you know, something, you can almost recall them and feel that genuine connection again. But if you never have that, you'll never be able to even tap into that feeling. It's something that's really, well, I think that's the most disturbing thing of all, that genuine human connection. They won't notice the difference between a real human and an AI bot because they didn't know what a human connection felt like in the first place. I mean, that's where I think, will people still crave live music then? If they don't know what live music feels like, I know I will.
Yeah.
But will they? Again, I don't care. It's irrelevant. I'm quite happy with this. It does feel very scary. And I kind of don't want to end it on that note. So very, very sort of beautifully moving into the final chapter of our this conversation has been much better than what I thought it was going to be. I don't know why I'm saying that, but it's just been so good. I'll listen to it back. If nobody else listens, I will be listening to it. They will. Some of the work that you're doing then, because I mentioned it, and because your experience is on TV, you've worked with Celebrity Big Brother and Big Brother. You've worked with a lot of reality TV shows, Deal and No Deal. You've done a lot of sort of the background work. And you've also got your own acting school, and you're also going into schools. You've got this real multidisciplinary approach. And something really interesting you said earlier about acting and why actually acting is so good for this interpersonal skills, for connection. And it could be, I wouldn't say the saviour, but if we do get our kids early on into performance skills, and, you know, even if it's for a few hours a week, it could actually be the thing that helps them connect, that helps them pay attention, that helps them want to learn. So tell me a bit about why that's so important, especially the acting, the performance, the media side.
Yeah, I think, you know, I think there are different things. So I think, you know, the media side of it is maybe, as in TV side, is maybe not so important, but the acting side of things, or getting our children into things that they have to perform, to put energy and effort into, to sustain focus in, is really important. Now more so than ever. So I set up something called I've got YAFTA, but I set up the YAFTA project. So YAFTA stands for Yorkshire Academy of Film and Television Acting. Set up the YAFTA project probably just before COVID, and it was a project that would go into schools and help use the medium of acting to help children process emotions in a space that felt safe and boundaried, but without being pushed and without it being used as an intervention as such. It was just kind of a very soft kind of intervention. And now that is more relevant than ever, because we go into schools now and teachers tell us that children can't make eye contact, they can't label their basic emotions, they don't have any resilience, they can't problem solve. So we go in and we use the art of acting to help children stretch their attentiveness to start with. So they will be we'll give them purposely fairly long scripts and say that, you know, at the end of, say, this 8 to 12 week course, you're going to be performing this script. So we're going to learn about the character. You're going to have developed your emotional subtext. You're going to develop your emotions around your character, the backstory of your character. So you're going to learn about you're going to think about another person and think about their emotions. Firstly, you're going to learn this entire script. You're going to stand up and perform. You're going to develop the confidence to do that, have the self-esteem to do that, and achieve something which makes you feel good about yourself. So that, I think, it helps a lot. Something I would say is, honestly, it's about going back to basics.
Yeah.
It really is. It's
Yeah.
like, just, I really feel, you know, my message used to be like, oh, you know, with devices, I think it is, you know, yes, it is about boundaries, but with AI being as powerful as it is, I feel that you know, I really don't think kids need access to AI.
No.
I really think that we need to let humans evolve as humans,
Yeah.
at least to the age of 18.
I agree.
Then, yes, you might want to use other tech. They might use gaming. Yes, they might use a device, but smart devices we know about. So
Yeah.
ideally, if we can, keep them away from devices as much as possible. Definitely off the AI, because if they're doing all their homework on it and they're building relationships with it, well, it's going to be quite hard for us to repair all of that all of those things that didn't develop when they should have developed. But when the human then gets to 18, then you can say, oh, look at all these fantastic AI tools. The argument that children need to learn to use tech is just null and void. The tech that these kids are going to use when they get older doesn't even exist yet.
No, you're right. You're right.
AI that is being used now will be redundant in a year because it's evolving so quickly.
Yeah.
Tech is so intuitive that a 4-month-old baby can learn to use it. Equally, someone who's 80 who's never used tech can learn to use it.
Yeah.
So you don't need to teach these.
You're right.
If it's something that a baby can learn to use, you don't need to teach it. Okay.
Yeah.
It's that intuitive. So we don't need all of these things. That's the marketing coming from these big tech companies trying to sell it into schools, and schools just buying it, and people buying into it. And then we've had this social contagion, societal shift, and now they're everywhere. What we really need is humans to go back to being human for most of the time. So spending time connecting, no devices in the middle of every relationship, no devices, ideally minimal device use at home, focus on the connection, focus on being present, spending time outdoors, running around, playing. It's basic stuff.
Yeah. What we would have done.
Yeah, it is.
It's so simple. It's ridiculous.
And I think, even back then, I suppose our parents would have been saying, oh, you're not going to spend all day watching TV.
Yes, that's right.
But they were, some people will argue, oh, every generation has something to be worried about. But rightly so, because actually since those days of TV, we've become more lonely, more unhealthy, we've been up fatter at the end of the day. So we have, they were the start, I'd say, of the demise.
Yeah.
And we've, the tech's gone like this. Human health has gone like that. And health and connection has gone like that. And I think it's snowballing now because we've built such powerful tech that can think for itself. It is snowballing, and it's faster than we can keep up with.
I know. And it is terrifying. But I think you're right. I think whilst it's extremely terrifying, if you as a parent take responsibility and accountability for your unit, for your little community, your acting school came about because you couldn't find anything in your area that was doing what you wanted to be able to achieve, what you wanted to be able to experience. So you became that person that set that school up so that you could offer that to the people that were like you, that were looking for that safe space. So if we are taking responsibility for our little sections, for our little families, our little communities, writing the books, and I'll say on that note, I wrote a book before COVID and it took me 2 years to do it. It's definitely not an amazing book. Some people that have read it have been very, very kind and said it was brilliant, but I personally am not that proud of it. I'm a bit hard on myself. But
I was going to say, but you seem like you are. Yeah.
Well, I guess I've got a perfectionist streak, so, full disclosure. But I would like to do another one. The thing is, though, and I genuinely believe this, I could write another book, put it through AI, and it would do it better than me.
AI can write your book for you.
I know.
This is why I didn't, one, that it scared me. This is why I didn't want to write the second one. Or I may still write it, but it scared me. But also I just thought, what's the point?
Yeah. Well, this is because people said, oh, did you AI your book then? No, I wrote it before COVID. So I didn't AI it, but people will assume that I am.
I don't know. I feel like kind of glad that I got that published because I feel as in maybe that's one of the last generations of like full writing out of someone's mind. I mean, we're not going to be long before AI. I think if you wrote a book 5-6 years ago, no one's thinking you AI'd it. I think AI can write the book. And the thing is, it depends on what you write about, but if I'm writing about AI, by the time my book's out, like you say, publishing cycle's 2 years long. It'll be a totally different beast. So there's no point writing about that, I don't think. But people will. I saw an article the other day, and it was quite a good article about people developing relationships with chatbots. But then when I was reading it, I could see all, the lines.
Oh, I hate that.
And I thought, you didn't even write this.
I hate that. Do you know what? That immediately makes me angry. Yeah,
because I thought, this isn't your words. This has come from ChatGPT.
Yeah, I hate that because I love writing. It's one of my, I'm not brilliant at it, and I would like to be better. It is a skill that if I had more time, I would definitely develop my writing skills. I can write short things really, really well, but long things, again, attention span, I'm like.
But you wrote a book.
I did write a book, but it did take me a really long time.
But it's meant to.
Yes, I know. Again, I don't speak to many writers. I think that doesn't help. I don't do a lot of that networking
Books take
stuff.
a long time to write. They're
They do.
supposed to. Yeah.
And I felt the pressure of getting it done at the time. And I'm glad I did feel that pressure, because if I'd have done it any later, again, I don't think I would have. I think I would have succumbed to AI. I think I would have used it to help me.
But was it around?
No, it wasn't.
Yeah.
Not when I wrote the book.
Yeah.
But if I'd have not done it then,
Yeah.
and I've thought, oh, I've really got a book in me, I need to write this book, I think I would have used it to help. And if I was to write anything again, not short blogs or articles, but if I was to write a book again, I'll be honest, I probably will use it to help me, because not to write it, I'll write it and then I'll put it in as the editor, I guess.
Yeah.
I probably will, because again, it does take so long to write it and to edit. You know the process.
Yeah.
But
there's a difference though at our age, I think, with using AI now, because we've had the opportunity for our brains to grow
and develop
to be fully functional adult brains. So we've had that opportunity. So for us to use things that can support it, but not to replace our brain. So sometimes we really need to give the brain a workout, because that's what keeps the memory going. But with young children, they're never really getting the opportunity to learn to think, because they're just outsourcing everything to AI.
Yeah, you're right.
We will end up becoming quite primitive if we're not careful.
Yeah. And again, and that's why I think people have got to be careful when they're using ChatGPT, to make sure they are injecting their own personality into it and editing it properly and taking chunks out and putting chunks in. And, I do a lot of content. I do a lot of writing content because I enjoy it. And I do video content. Obviously, I use this a lot for that. But if I'm going to put anything on social media, I like to write it. And when I see other people's social media posts and I start to go, oh, that's really, a bit like you, that's really interesting. Oh, you didn't do that. So how can I trust you?
Yeah.
How can I trust anything you're saying, because you didn't say it? And it does. It angers me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think you're doing yourself a disservice, actually, because the enjoyment and the achievement, you won't understand what that feels like. And you are old enough to know what that feels like. So if you're doing that at the age of, say, 36, what are you encouraging your children to do? And that's where this is a real knock-on effect. But you've mentioned some really good points about going into the woods, going back to basics, getting outside, do the creative things, be it acting, be it dancing, be it writing, be it painting, making jewellery. All of those things are such fun, beautiful, wonderful things to do. And I think not that we can save the world that way, but we can certainly have a big impact if we start to bring those things back into our lives. And
I think so. We can protect ourselves. I think we're going to get to a point where, as much as people post everything online now, and I think we're going to get to a point in society where we are much more nervous about it, because AI can take it, exploit it, use it. I mean, we already are now, but I think it will get much worse, where it's almost man versus machine.
No, you're right.
And I think we will get to that, I suppose we're talking about, slightly dystopian future, but also not that unrealistic, because we're not that far away from it. Right. And these things are already happening, where we're having to say, don't post kids online, don't put this online, don't put, so we're already doing that now. Going back to basics, just living, naturally separating from the devices. So my book centres around that concept of the psychoanalytical concept of the third, how, in any relationship, the infant, so you've got traditionally you'd be saying mother and baby, and then you have infant, you have mother and baby, and then you have this third, whether that's grandparent or father or partner, whoever it is in that relationship. And the baby has to learn to adjust to that third person. And that's normally like the family unit, and maybe siblings, whatever. It doesn't have to be two parents. But now what I look at is how there's already, it's almost like the baby's the third person, because you've got mum, phone, then you've got baby. So mum's already got the relationship with phone. We all do. Mum, dad, everyone's got the relationship with the phone already. And then the baby comes into that. So it's more like the child's trying to fit into this sort of toxic, controlling relationship that we have with this device. And so what we ideally need to do is separate from that, put this like extension of our arm down.
Yeah.
Try and practice doing that as well as much as possible. Like go to the bathroom without the phone.
Yes.
Don't take, I mean, for the one thing that you can take away is don't take your phones into your bedroom on night time. Leave them downstairs to charge so that you're getting a full night's sleep, especially the kids, full night's sleep, and you're waking up and you're not being flooded and overstimulated.
Yeah.
Well, last thing at night and first thing in the morning. But just let's separate, spend more time connecting with people in real life.
Yeah.
Spend more time actually going out and doing different activities which are good for us, whether that's sports, whether that's arts, whether that's just going for a walk and doing something, maybe it's just hanging out with friends.
Going for a coffee.
Yeah, just sitting with your mates though. Do you remember those days where you just sat and just didn't really do anything, but you were just all
sat in the park.
Yeah, just everyone hanging out together.
Yeah.
No, but going back to doing that will do the world of good for our mental health, for our attention spans, for our interpersonal skills, for our longevity.
Yes.
For our health and well-being.
Yeah.
And it's not expensive and it's not complicated.
Yeah.
In fact, what we need to do is take a step back from the technology before it completely obliterates us.
I cannot believe how fascinating this conversation has been. Because although I know you wrote that about devices, but the AI element has just added so much more fear, but also interest. No, but I think it's important because I think a lot of people do have the ignorance is bliss attitude. And I think, we've all been guilty of that at times, but I think it's really important that we start to have these conversations more and more. I mean, you've got things like brain tumours in children that are on the rise as well. There's so much that we have to, I know I've thrown that in as like a juicy bit at the end, but the truth is, it's scary. Yes, we have to be accountable. Yes, we need to go back to basics. And actually, if you're willing, and this is going to sound like a really strange statement, but if you're willing to be truly happy and healthy to the best of your ability, then this conversation is a really important one for people because, we aren't practicing the pause enough. We aren't stopping. We're not taking stock of the trees and we're not, well, I am, but, a lot of people aren't. And I'm really grateful for the job that I do because I'm back to back with people all day long. I can't be on my phone all day.
Yeah.
I have to be present with that person and thank the sweet Lord because I still experience connection on a daily level. Yes, I do work too hard, but actually I think it's because I get to do one of the best jobs in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Because I'm getting to build relationships. I'm getting to do all of the things that we've spoken about today, with people and have a real experience with people. And I do some work online, but I don't do any podcasts online because I love this.
Yeah.
Like we've had some great conversations today before and after recording. We've laughed, we've gone deep subjects. We've done what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I know people listening in on this may be listening in on their devices, but it's a good thing to do.
Well, there's a good use and bad use of tech.
Exactly.
And I think we have to be realistic. It's not saying all bad. It's like actually what's healthy and how's healthy to use it.
Yeah.
I think the answer with kids is minimal tech as much as you can.
Yes.
But as adults, we know it's health. We know it's useful.
Yeah.
How we choose. It's a bit like, fast food useful.
Yeah, it's like you said, McDonald's.
But we're not going to have it all the time because it's not the best option. So it's a nuanced situation, and we have to be realistic about the world that we live in now. And I've so many times wanted to get rid of my phone, and I can't because actually even just to get into my banking, for example, I would need some sort of code off that phone, and I want to get rid of one of my phone numbers. Can't do that because the code's sent to that phone number. So if I don't have that phone number, I can't get the code. So it is insidious.
Yes, it is.
And we can't extricate it easily from our lives. That being said, I will happily turn that off, get, some sort of Nokia type phone.
I've said that,
and give it just to people who need to have my details. Or I also think like the people who know me well enough have got my phone number, and I would rather have relationships with my friends in real life. Like I would rather not see someone for ages and then go and have, see them for lunch and have a day than just have a constant.
I agree. Gets boring.
It's boring, yeah.
The funny thing is that the very thing that's supposed to flood our brains with dopamine will eventually make you bored of everything. So when you see people in person, you get that natural cellular response. It's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And you can't replace that. But we are fast approaching a situation where our children aren't being taught the feelings in the first place, which is what the fear is, which is why this book's so important, why your work in schools is so important, even with the talent agency, even with the acting school, because it's all about teaching how to be in touch with those feelings, how to connect. And so what looks like just, another book on this subject actually is so much more than that. And I think everybody should go and buy it for a start. But where can they buy it?
It's available everywhere. So Amazon, WH Smith's, Waterstones. I think just, if you Google it, it'll come up, most major retailers.
And also, where can they follow you?
I'm not that active on socials really. Obviously because of what I do. But I've got an Instagram account and it's just at Dr. Charlotte Armitage. I have a Substack that I've just started, which is at Charlotte Armitage. And that's it. Yeah.
So Substack will probably be a very interesting place to follow you, I would imagine.
Yeah. So I'm going to start putting more content.
Yes.
More modern stuff. I've got a podcast called Generation Zombie as well.
Yes, you have. Yeah.
So you can listen to that, and I have different experts coming on, people who've read the book and implemented changes, telling us what that's like. People who are talking about ADHD and autism, the role of devices in that, speech and language development. I've got doctors coming on. I've got lived experience guests coming on as well. So a variety of different people.
And where can they find you for the podcast?
Apple and Spotify.
Amazing.
Yeah. And actually, if people do read the book and implement changes, and if it has an effect for them, then I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah, great. That's really, really powerful. Thank you so much for giving your time today, but also for everything you're doing. Because I think it's so easy, like I said, to ignorance is bliss, to ignore this problem. And I think what you're doing now is hugely important, the work that you're doing, more so than any of us really realise at the minute, I think. So I want to personally thank you for doing that as well.
That's so sweet. Thank you.
It's true. It's really important. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for inviting me.